Alright everyone, today's video is going to be about balancing in Tom Clancy's The Division. Whether it be gear sets, skills, or other mechanics, it's just a general overview and a lot of me talking and a bit of a rant about balancing and my opinions on that subject. Before really diving in, I want to make one thing very clear. I do not believe that true, unimpeachable, and total balance is ever possible, whether it be in this game or pretty much any other. You will never have a situation where every single gear set is viable for every single player to complete every single goal. There will always be stronger and weaker mechanics, whether it be gear sets, whether it be high-end pieces of gear, exotics, weapons, talents, etc., skills. All of these things, there will be imbalances in the sense that some are stronger than others. So I am not saying that that is possible, nor am I saying that that should even be something that they strive to achieve. Now, some people may be thinking, well, if you can't have true balance, then what's the point? Of course they can achieve true balance. It's just a matter of tweaking things. But to those people, I would say, picture this. A scenario like League of Legends. There are games out there that do not have perfect balance, but instead they opt for regular changes to the individual numbers on skills. Maybe it's a 2% increase to the amount of seconds it takes to recharge a skill. Maybe it's just a reduction in the radius in which you then cast the skill. There are minor changes that take place very, very frequently in MOBA games like League of Legends and many other MMOs or even looter shooters, which adjust the balancing and tweak the meta, thus throwing things up in the air and allowing players to be flexible, try different things, and there's never really a stagnant section of time where things are exactly the same. The Division goes for basically the exact opposite of this system. You can take a look back at the past of the game and the history, and you can see the Tactician meta of 1.2. You can see the Sentry Shotgun meta that took place on consoles in 1.3. You can see the Alpha Bridge meta that was shaping up a little bit after that, and the Crit Build meta of patch 1.1 in the old days. There is always a very, very decisive and clearly laid out metagame of at least 1, 2, or maximum of 3 different gear sets which dominate what most players are using and the entire experience in the Dark Zone in PvP and even in PvE as well. I believe that leaving the player base with a pretty well laid out pyramid of efficiency of gear and thus a very defined metagame for long periods of time is one of the #1 impacting factors behind why players leave the game. Let's say right now, and there's a lot of evidence to back this up, that Striker, Predator, and Nomad are the top 3 sets and that is what most players are using. Relatively speaking, they are stronger than other competing builds, and you are not able to get your hands on any of them. Luckily for me, I do have a Striker build, so if I need to, I can slap that on and I can compete. And anyone that really takes a look at Striker is going to know that this build can perform multiple roles. You can heal yourself, you can have an insane amount of toughness, an insane amount of stamina, and a ridiculous amount of damage. So it's a widely known fact that this gear set is not overpowered, and I will not use those words and say that it is OP. I will, however, say that it is stronger than many other setups, and that's a well-known fact. So if you cannot get your hands on this set in particular or one of the other, high-ranking tier 1 gear sets or builds, then you are at a distinct disadvantage. With the rarity of gear and with the frequency at which you are being killed in environments like the Dark Zone or even while farming things like Last Stand or Skirmish, you may find yourself not enjoying the game as much as you could because the type of playstyle that you prefer, the gear that you do have in your arsenal and that you want to use is not as effective. Now, I say all this as a PvP-minded player. There are a lot of great missions and there's a lot of different PvE activities in which to farm. But to me, that gets extremely boring extremely quickly. And I always find myself gravitating back towards player versus player encounters. And another thing that needs to be addressed really quickly is that the player base themselves have to own up to a lot of the responsibility associated with the imbalancing and with this kind of oppressive metagame structure that the Division ends up having for long periods of time. Because there's this weird kind of back and forth that happens where if you are not running something that is considered to be tier 1, the strongest, or the meta, or the best, then people will ridicule you. I have been, made fun of. I have been attacked. I have been, harassed in comments or in messages for not using what is quote unquote one of the strongest builds in the game. just simply for using something that was off meta, different, maybe wasn't as effective as some other builds, but that I enjoyed more, and for spreading that content on YouTube. I have been targeted and put down because of that, and almost like shunned or shamed because I'm not using what is mathematically the most superior build. With that mentality circulating around, it warranted a mention that the players themselves are contributing in no small way to the entrenched metas and to this problem. However, I do believe firmly, and I've said this on the live streams many, many times, and this is kind of a response to a lot of feedback that I get about the game to this day, and about my strong opinions on the game. I do believe that the developers would serve the game far better by installing a much more frequent and much smaller balancing patch rotation. To again draw it back to games like League of Legends, you will see that they rework champions over time. You know, once in a while they'll come out with a brand new set of abilities. It's all completely different, new art style, new everything. That does not need to happen as often. That is, of course, great. If they do rework gear sets here and there, the ones that are completely broken or, you know, not functioning properly at all, not used by anyone, then that's fantastic. But what is more common and much more beneficial to a game like League of Legends that does not ever want to devolve into a stagnant meta game that does not change and drives players away and results in ranked games always picking the same champions, always picking the same summoner skills. What they do is a very frequent, even weekly sometimes, rotation of patches which mix up the mechanics in small ways, as I previously mentioned. Now picture a situation in the Division where something like Striker is down-tuned. The amount of healing that you get is down-tuned on a weekly basis based on how strong it is. Predator, the bleed receives a nerf. Things like these are happening. Just the numerical values of gear sets are changing on a much more frequent basis instead of leaving us for months on end with the exact same numbers, so that everyone can come out with build videos, all of the content creators can show what is the strongest, and then the community can adopt it and aggressively force their peers to conform to it. If we are placed in a situation where that is no longer possible, where there are changes more frequently, even small ones, that will spur build diversity more than any other balancing change that the developers could make. There are a lot of strings attached with a structure like this, and it's not just a simple proposition that could then be adopted immediately and put into practice. There are third parties involved. There's things like Microsoft, which, you know, can hold up patches, and there's approval times. Sony is involved. But I do think that the game would benefit from a smaller, more calculated, more precise round and wave and rotation of balancing that would then tackle simply changing the numerical values of sets in order to bring them up to par. Now, like I said before, and I'll end on this note, there will never be true balance in the sense that every set will be able to compete with every other set in a way that makes it so it's playable for everyone that wants to try it, especially in PvP. But I think that we can have a nice rotation of the metagame, and I do think that we can have a nice circular pattern of counters, soft and hard counters to each other. You know, if you have a gear set that counters another gear set, and that one counters the third, and the third counters the fourth, and the fourth counters the fifth, on and on we go with all of the different gear sets, and then you have the numerical values of that circle of counters adjusted on perhaps a weekly or even a bi-weekly basis, bare minimum on a monthly basis, then I think the game would be in a lot better position, a lot more, you know, health in the player base, and a lot more diversity in the builds, especially the PvP, and a lot more player satisfaction. So this has been a really long video of me just ranting about a topic. I understand that, but it's kind of in response to a lot of the feedback that I get from the community. So let me know if you like this type of video, if you want to hear me go on these rants more often, if you'd like to hear my thoughts on this game and many others, and the balancing and the community and the development process. And if not, then I just won't do them, because why not? I mean, the viewers do determine the content, and I oftentimes change up my content based on what people would like to see. But if it's unrealistic, then I won't do it. I can't necessarily pump out 200 of them per day, but you get the point. That's going to wrap it up, guys. Check out the links down below. Consider supporting on Patreon. YouTube is not exactly reliable these days. Check out the website as well. Great community there, the Facebook group, and Upper Echelon is expanding each and every day. Thank you again for watching, and as always, have a nice night.